Welcome back, everybody. Again, we're here with Kathy Pomahawk, the Executive Director at the Carrie Lynn Children's Center. We've been talking about child abuse. This is something everybody needs to know about, whether you have kids or not, because we all know kids in our lives. This abuse can have really long-lasting effects on a child well into adulthood. So let's touch on that a little bit. And the first thing that you say is actually just what I said, that it survives for years and years even after the abuse is over.
Yeah, I think people, parents that I talk to, you know, I can't tell you how many times someone will say to me, I just hope they're going to forget. Or I hope it's going to, they're not going to forget. Certainly if we have a 2-year-old that has had, you know, possibly, of course. But an older child is always going to have some recollection or some remembrance of what happened to them. Certainly older children will. And yes, it can have long-term effects. The range of how it affects a child, though, can vary, and it certainly depends on the child. The other thing it depends on is the parent's response. The kids that we see at the center that aren't believed, they tell over and over again and they're not protected, those kids are going to go on to have some pretty severe issues with depression and anxiety, you know, promiscuity, possibly drug addiction, you know, things like that. But the children that are believed right away and protected right away and are told, I love you no matter what, and I believe you and I'm proud of you, those kids stand a chance of being really, really okay. I don't want people to think that just because a child is sexually abused or physically abused, that it becomes a scarlet letter in their head. It's absolutely not true.
So as a parent, you can really stop a lot of that from going on with them, even though they're never going to forget it.
That's right, that's right. The other thing that it's really dependent on is who did the abuse. You know, if it's a person that was really close to them and you know, that they loved and trusted, perhaps a father or a mother, then that's going to have a different impact than a child who was abused by her pastor at church or, you know, a coach on her soccer team. You know, that person is never probably going to have anything to do with their life ever again, and probably had kind of a short-term part of their life anyway. So they're going to go, you know, it's not going to have the same impact as a child who's dealing with abuse by their father.
Because while it's not a situation you can forget, you can kind of move on from that person, whereas you can never really move on from your parents. That's a lot harder. I thought that was interesting you said I'm proud of you, because I think a lot of kids internalize this and think that it's their fault in some way.
In many ways, yes, and usually, and a lot of times that's why kids don't tell. Because they think it's their fault, they think they're not going to be believed. Somehow I did something wrong, or I said something, or there was something about me.
Or the abuser's probably telling them that.
It very well could be. Absolutely.
You know, why do you want to start all this?
Yeah, you can't tell. You're going to get in trouble if you tell. You know, they're going to blame you. Absolutely. So children believe that. They internalize that.
Wouldn't you? Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
It'd be so scary. You also talk about higher rates of depression. That seems like a given. Anxiety, even like eating disorders, drug abuse. I mean, it seems like this could go any direction.
Absolutely, and that's why when a child discloses abuse, it's really important that a child also then go on to a therapist and work with a therapist. You know, what we do at the center, we do the initial investigation and we conduct the forensic interviews, but what we also do is we wrap that child, you know, with services so that hopefully that doesn't happen. If we can get them in with a therapist who is, you know, adept at dealing with child issues and working with kids who have been abused, then that's really a critical key to their ongoing success. As well as parenting and in their home life and all of those things. So another big piece of that is making sure the parent also has a resource and can talk about what's happened to their child and ask questions.
So basically what I hear you saying is that, you know, you can't as a parent just think that you can just parent your child back to health by yourself, but that part of it is very important. You need to be doing your part also.
We can't all be experts at everything. You know, as a parent,
that's right.
You know, so let the professionals help you. That's what we do.
Okay, low self-esteem.
Yes.
Let's talk about that one. That's huge.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, kids are already, especially teenagers, are already dealing with self-esteem issues. But when you know, and figuring out what their self-worth is and having success in their life. But when they endure abuse by someone, let's say, especially if someone that they love and they trust, you know, suddenly they look at, why was it me? Why am I different than my friend who didn't have this happen? And it must be something that I'm not doing right or something that's bad about me. And obviously, when you're already dealing with esteem issues and trying to figure out your place in life, then that can have a huge impact.
I mean, I have to say, I think anytime that I have low self-esteem, I can trace it back to kids making fun of me. Maybe an older girl in my carpool one time made a comment that has stuck with me for decades. And that's such a mild thing that I'm sure she forgot 20 minutes later. So I can imagine something more serious. That's really going to eat away at your self-confidence constantly.
Well, and the other piece of that you have to remember is that when children disclose abuse, a lot of times that, you know, they're looking for the abuse to stop. Obviously, that's their goal in most situations. They want that behavior to stop, but they don't necessarily want their life to change, you know, and they don't realize that the impact of that disclosure can have. You know, if let's say it's a father who's abusing a daughter, and daughter suddenly decides she's going to disclose, suddenly that changes the whole family dynamic, and they absorb that. Kids, just like kids of divorce absorb those things and feel like it's their fault, it's the same thing with abuse victims, that, you know, they've come forward and they finally had the courage to tell what's happened to them. But then it changes everything, and that's not what they were hoping for, and to have to deal with that, and that can be very depressing for a child.
So I almost wonder, as a parent, even if you don't suspect abuse, is it important to still have that conversation and let your child know if anything happens? Absolutely. Feel like you can talk to me, because
earlier the better.
Something could be going on and you're not aware of it.
That's right. Earlier the better. You need to start having those conversations when your children are small, and I know it's hard, and I know we don't want to talk about it, and I know we don't want to believe it's happening, but you have to open, very simple, there's all kinds of resources online. If you Google how to talk to your kid about abuse, there's all kinds of ways to do it, even with there's storybooks, and there's various things that parents can do. Do it early.
Because obviously you have to keep it age appropriate. And you don't want to be telling your child anything inappropriate, but you want them to recognize what those inappropriate things are, so that's a really fine line.
Yeah, you don't want to necessarily be introducing new themes to your child, but at the same time you want them to have the skills and the knowledge to protect themselves, and to know who to tell at the very least, that it's okay to tell mommy if this happened. I want to know. Please tell me. You know, you need to have those communications.
So for example, like take like a 5-year-old. How would you explain to a 5-year-old what they need to look for? How would you approach a 5-year-old?
You need to talk to your child about where the private places on your body are.
Okay.
Places where the only people that should be touching you in those places are for the purposes of keeping you clean and healthy.
Like your doctor.
Yeah, like your doctor, that's right. There might be times when a doctor might have to do that. Or when you're helping your child with a bath. Of course, that's going to happen. And they need to differentiate between those times. So if you can talk to them about those places on their body, or any kind of touch that's uncomfortable to them, or the other big key is if they're receiving a touch and being told to keep it a secret. Those aren't good secrets to tell.
Okay, so just it should never be a secret.
It should never. No, you should have no secrets from mommy when you're 5 years old.
Okay.
So those are the kind of things you should be saying.
See, that's great, because I think it would be really overwhelming to try to figure out how to say these things to your child. So I think that's a really great example.
And then add to it who you can tell. Who are people, let's say mommy's not around. Who can you tell when mommy's not around? Okay, daddy or grandma or teacher or aunt so-and-so or sister, or, you know. But the key is, if as the child gets over, the other part of that message, if you tell and no one believes you, if you tell and it doesn't stop, tell again.
Okay.
Keep telling until someone believes you.
And this is what you should tell your child.
That's right.
Regardless of whether you think they're being abused or not.
That's right.
Just let every kid know this.
Yep.
The final health effect that you list here is actually that it can impact education attainment. I thought that was interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you think about it, if a child is being abused at home, then the last thing they're thinking about is their schoolwork. And they're not, you see it in two ways, actually. You know, some children are overachievers and, you know, get straight A's and totally throw themselves into what they're doing. And that's not unusual. But then you have the other children that they're so absorbed in what's going on at home. And that becomes their only focus, is surviving after school. And they're all day, during the day, they're thinking, oh gosh, I have to go home. What am I going to do? Then obviously they're not focused on school. Yeah,
so let me ask you this, and we're running out of time, so we need to take a break. So real quickly, for teachers who suspect this or see a change in their students, what can they do? Because I have friends who are teachers who I know have a hard time sometimes approaching parents about things.
And I think that's, going back to what we talked about, trust your gut. If a teacher has an issue or is concerned, trust their gut. If they have any questions, they should call a professional and ask. If they suspect abuse, make the report.
Okay, let's get these numbers up on your screen again one more time. The Department of Children and Family Services, 1-800-25-ABUSE. The Carrie Lynn Children's Center is 815-319-4150. These are all great resources if you have questions or want more information. Or go online to carrie-lynn.org. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to actually prevent child abuse.